Okay, good afternoon. If we can take our seats for those that need to be seated. I'd like to call this Committee of the Whole Workshop meeting of September 18th, 2019 to order. I'd like to begin by reading a safety notice. In the event of an emergency, please evacuate council chambers to the nearest exit through the chamber doors and obey all instructions given by the clerk, Rebecca, here in front of us. And if assistance is required, please see the clerk. Once you have evacuated the building, please gather in the front parking lot outside of Town Hall. Also, Town of Lincoln Committee and council meetings are posted on our YouTube channel. And let's silence our cellular devices. And in fact, let's turn our cellular devices off. That would probably work better. So from a roll call standpoint, regrets have been received from Councillor Pachariva and Councillor Russell. And we expect to see Councillor Brunet come in the door. And Councillor Reimer is expected as well. Might have got hung up. We have all of our staff, some of them hiding behind the display signs we see over there. Hello. And here on the back table, we have many of our senior management staff here in attendance as well. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations? Seeing none. Statutory public meetings. There are no statutory public meetings on the agenda. Delegations, there are no delegations on the agenda. Consent agenda, there is none. The regular agenda. So we are now considering item 7.1, staff workshop regarding tourism strategy, gateways, and wayfinding. The Economic Development Officer, Mr. Deanny, will now introduce the presentation along with the consultants Janice Fedorwick from Wayfront Planning and Design and Mike Robbins from the Tourism Company. Take it away.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to the committee and councillors, it is a pleasure to be here with you today for our council workshop regarding our tourism strategy, gateways design, wayfinding, and signage program. This workshop today does represent a milestone in this project. As a Greenbelt community, there are so many wonderful tourism assets here in Lincoln, so it does make sense, obviously, from an economic development standpoint, to be focusing on growing our tourism sector. How can you not, obviously, when we have over 50 wineries, breweries, distilleries, and wonderful tourism assets here in Lincoln. So to date, working with our consultants, we have conducted over 46 interviews, conducted 2 key business stakeholder sessions, as well as surveys geared towards both our business community, as well as our residents here in Lincoln. In fact, just yesterday, we did launch our public survey, and in less than 24 hours, we have received over 40 responses, which is a good result rate. In today's session, we will be having a presentation from our consultants, followed by 2 breakout sessions, one in the Beamsmore room focused on gateway design and wayfinding, and one in the Camden room focused on tourism destination management. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Janice from Wayfront Design and Mike Robbins, and we'll have more to say at the end. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and hoping to have a really good session with you today, an information exchange between ourselves and yourselves, to really go into some of the details of what we've been working on for the last number of months, and to get your ideas on how to move forward. So this is our agenda for today, and we're just going to give a brief project overview, followed by Mike will give an update on the tourism strategy, and I will give one on gateways and wayfinding. Then we're going to break up into 2 groups, 2 mobile workshops. One Mike will lead on tourism, and I'll lead the other on gateways and wayfinding. We're going to come back together and just wrap up and talk about the next steps. So the purpose of today's workshop, as I mentioned, is to have an information exchange and to provide an update on our key findings. There's 3 important questions we're going to try to keep in our minds during the workshop. The first one is, what role will the town of Lincoln have? What responsibilities for tourism? And to brainstorm around 3 new big ideas that could happen in Lincoln and could be unique to it. And finally, to comment on the location and the style of the gateways and the wayfinding, what we've done to date. So as you know, we have been looking at 7 key tourism themes, as you see up in front of you. And we continue to look and dive into them deeper and deeper as we go. And where we are at right now is that we've completed our vision, our objectives, and our visitor strategy. We have completed our situational and character analysis. Those are basically all the boards that you see all around you. And they list all the features that have something to do with tourism or could be considered for tourism on those boards, and the location is there. We're going to talk today about the destination model a lot in Mike's session and the visitor experiences and the gaps. And at the end, we will be doing a 5-year action plan. So something else that we're going to be putting in is really something that we talk about, that's sort of a tourism infrastructure, and it's what tourists will experience when they come to the town of Lincoln. So we're going to be looking at everything that you see there, the sense of arrival, visitor services, and so on, but really think of it as when the tourist arrives, what is their experience? How do they first know about Lincoln, and are they excited to come to Lincoln by what they see on the websites, what they hear on radio and TV? When they are driving through in the QEW, do they know about the town? Is there something that can assist us in that way? And when they get out of their cars, is there something that visually greets them? And when they're driving through, is it easy to get from one place to the other? So these are all things that we're considering as we go through. Now, the last time we were here, we were in step 1, and this time we're in step 4. So we've completed everything that was in our mandate to do up to this point, and we're now in the process of putting together the first draft. And we're just at the beginning, and that's why we scheduled this interview at this time, so that we could get feedback from you as we really dive deep into the first draft. Now, stakeholders are a really important part of our process, and we have had a very intensive public engagement program. And I'll just give an update on where we are at with that. So for information, we have had information sheets completed. We have done 3 out of 5 online project updates, and we do those at the end of each of the 5 steps. So there'll be another one coming up soon at the end of October for step 4. For surveys, we put out 2 surveys. One was to the business communities and senior management team and organizations. The other one was an online public survey. And I just handed these out just to give you a really good synopsis of all the communications that we've had. Just to put it in a graphic format. We have had, for the online business survey, we have had 10 responses out of 86 that were sent. We sent them to every business that was listed in the Chamber of Commerce in their data sheet. For the senior management, we sent out 11, we received 8, and for stakeholders, we sent out 13 and received back 4. Now, the public survey we just launched, and already in one day we received 38 responses, which I think is quite high for day 1. So that's really good. That means that people are very interested and really want to contribute to what we're doing. So really thrilled about that. We've had a number of meetings, and as you know, we've had the key stakeholder visioning workshop, and that was with the business owners and key stakeholders. Then we had a think tank that was about a week ago, and we will be having a PIC on October 16th. Interviews, we have completed all of our interviewing, and we did them both face-to-face, and we did some by way of phone interviews. And for council presentations, we are doing one today, but although it's a workshop format. We did one at the beginning, and there'll be one at the end. So we're really far through. We're completed a lot of it, but there's still a few steps left to go. So now I'll pass it over to Mike, and he'll give you an update on the tourism strategy.
Okay, thank you, Janice. Just put my watch here to keep track of my time. You can hear me well enough? Okay, I'm not going to run through the process. Janice and Paul have covered that suitably, but I will focus on providing you with an overview, really, of our findings to this stage. And through the summer, we've been in very much of a listening and exploring phase, and then, of course, with some interactive sessions with some of the stakeholders. So we're at that point now, where over the next couple of weeks, we will be putting pen to paper in writing the first draft of a tourism strategy for Lincoln. I don't need to go through the stats for you. You know the numbers, but the point I'll make here is that there is Niagara Falls is a mass tourism destination. I think, you know, from all we've heard from the stakeholders in Lincoln, and our assessment of the character of the region, it's not a region where you want to attract mass tourism. But there is a huge opportunity, of course, with the access to markets, the QEW and so on. But there is also a potential threat there, right, in terms of we have to be careful of how the destination is developed so as not to overdevelop from a tourism perspective and entice mass tourism effects, which would obviously change the character of the destination. Niagara Falls and Niagara-on-the-Lake are already well established as tourism destinations. Where we will be leading you is how Lincoln and the area around Lincoln can be established as a strong tourism destination as well, catering to some of the same markets that Niagara-on-the-Lake might, and perhaps even Niagara Falls, but catering to other market segments that you have the opportunities to cater to. When we do an analysis of the markets, we try to understand the current situation. There's not a lot of data on existing visitation within the town of Lincoln. There is some general data for the whole of the Niagara Peninsula in terms of visitor numbers and characteristics of those visitors. But in future, that is a gap that needs to be filled. We need more market intelligence in Lincoln so that decisions can be made based on well-founded understanding of the characteristics of visitors who are coming here. We also take a look at future tourism trends to try and anticipate who the tourists are in the future who provide an opportunity for this destination. And just to summarize very quickly, obviously the vineyards in particular, with the tasting rooms and the facilities and the tours and so on, are doing well with visitors touring through on the wine route and the ale route and so on, and doing extremely well with weddings as a market segment, mostly catering to small groups and free and independent travelers, so individuals or couples or small groups. Many of the wineries that we spoke to are purposely trying to avoid bus motor coach tourism. So again, that's kind of gets back to this capacity issue and the type of tourist that you're looking for. In the future, obviously the millennial market, which is, you know, the baby boom is the big market right now. The millennials are the future of tourism here and elsewhere in the world. And increasingly, we know that they are cognizant and aware and interested in more sustainable options and what they perceive to be authentic. They want to know about the character of the destination, and they're looking for experiences. And my quick definition of experiences is that the vineyards right now are providing tasting rooms, and some have restaurants, some have other facilities. An experience is something that goes beyond that and adds extra value and begins to pull in some of the unique attributes and character of this region that differentiates this beverage destination from other beverage destinations. There's a proliferation, of course, of places, even where I live up in Collingwood and the Beaver Valley, with cideries and some vineyards and breweries and so on. We have to differentiate, and travelers are increasingly sophisticated and experienced. And I think the other opportunity is or the other trend that's important to recognize is the digitization of everything. There are destinations that are rethinking how to provide visitor information for travelers in the destination and moving away from capital and labor-intensive visitor centers and providing more digital solutions in venues that already exist and that are attracting those people. For example, the Southern Georgian Bay region, where I live, again, is focused. They've created a joint initiative between Wasaga, Blue Mountain, and Collingwood that is focused solely on in-destination education. Oops. From what we've heard and what we've experienced in Lincoln, there are some important considerations that are important to identify leading into developing a strategy. Obviously, you want to ensure the economic benefits of tourism stay in this region to the extent possible. There's a lot of areas in the world that bring in big players that extract the economic benefits, so economic leakage leaving the destination. Here, it's important that the opportunities are developed in such a way that the benefits stay here. You have a unique environmental and cultural heritage character here in Lincoln. It's important to protect the integrity of those resources, because that is what really differentiates you from other destinations. And of course, tourism is one economic pillar for this community to help create more livable and appealing communities, the rural community as well as the villages and towns. Our assessment of the competitive strengths, quickly, the proximity to markets, you know that, the GTA, the Golden Horseshoe, and upstate New York. But it's not, you have to look beyond that as well. For example, Toronto attracts annually something in the order of 20 million tourists, right? And we know that international visitors to Toronto want to have experiences outside of Toronto. A lot of them are coming to Niagara Falls, but there is potential to attract not only the GTA market, but also the markets that are traveling to the GTA as a gateway. The agrarian rural landscape. When you drive along the QEW and as you're passing Grimsby, or the boundaries of Grimsby, the escarpment bends away, and it is an agrarian rural landscape, and that's kind of the character, right? And with amazing topographic diversity, with the Niagara Escarpment and the valleys and so on off that, and the benches. Those are unique features to this region, and the Lake Ontario shoreline. You've got a tremendous quantity and quality of beverage establishments in this area. But again, there's a proliferation of those beverage establishments, so we have to differentiate in the marketing in terms of the quality. The cultural heritage, authenticity, and scale, that came out in all of our discussions with tourism operators. They felt that was one of the major attractions to the town of Lincoln. It's what Niagara-on-the-Lake may have used to be, but isn't anymore. When we did our inventory of all the tourism assets, we categorized, and Janice has referred to this, And some of the maps that you see behind us here provide a graphic illustration of those asset inventories. And we've vetted those in our industry sessions, and there's some of these are market ready, of course, like the vineyards and those operations like Bench Brewery. Some are not. Some are very underutilized and underdeveloped from a tourism perspective, like agritourism and or cultural and heritage tourism, but are real differentiators for the town of Lincoln. They are what make Lincoln different from any other destination. The stories that can be told, the experiences that can be created around some of those assets are what are truly unique. We've done a comprehensive SWOT analysis, assessment of the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. On this slide, I only provide a real quick synopsis of some of the SWOTs, as we call them, the acronym. But the ones I'll point out, and you're already familiar with, the accommodation capacity is an issue. And we've done a comprehensive inventory of all the commercial rooms available, even including Airbnb, B&Bs, et cetera, et cetera. And we will consider that accommodation capacity as an important element in the strategy, how to expand that capacity. Transportation is an issue in terms of within the destination, to the destination, increasing traffic congestion on weekends on the QEW. There need to be alternatives in the future. And it's not well pulled together as a destination. This is not recognized as a tourism destination. We've done a number of case studies looking at other somewhat analogous destinations that have had success, that feature similar types of products and experiences as we can develop here, like Prince Edward County, and we've just summarized some of the characteristics, but in the report there will be a full summary of our analysis of those competitive or of those case studies. And the reason we do those is to learn from their successes and their best practices. So the Thompson Okanagan in BC is recognized internationally now. They've won a number of awards because they're pushing the envelope in terms of sustainable tourism. Hawke's Bay, New Zealand, I lived and worked in New Zealand for a number of years. It's a very successful wine region in New Zealand, of course, Napa Valley. Some of the key lessons that we've learned from those case studies are repeated on this slide. The long view, there's a need to continually refresh and upgrade tourism products and experiences in any destination. Nurture and facilitate tourism as part of an integrated economy, and that's the case here. Tourism is one of the pillars of the economic strategy that was prepared for the town last year, along with several others that are very closely tied to tourism, agriculture, and the beverage sector. Broaden the appeal with a focus on the community's unique assets. That gets back to that point I made about culture and heritage, the environment, and so on. Some of the lesser known and recognized attributes right now in the tourism industry that need to be pulled in through development of experiences. So going beyond just the vineyards offering the tours and the tasting rooms and so on, and creating unique experiences that you can only find in Lincoln. Unified branding is an important one, and I'll come back to that and give you our perspective on the current efforts at branding this destination. But the long and the short of it is that this is not well developed as a destination at this point. And being clear on who does what, the roles and responsibilities, and that's one of the exercises I will take you through in the Camden room this afternoon. By the way, there was an industry structure, a tourism industry structure assessment done in 2009 that came to for the Ministry of Tourism that came to a number of conclusions that are relevant to this particular piece of work. They found that SME, small and medium enterprises, dominate the tourism industry, and there is often a lack of collaboration across different sectors, those categories that I talked about, arts and culture, winery, beverage makers, and so on. There's a lot of duplication and a need to have better alignment in RTO, DMO, municipal, et cetera, destination development and marketing. And there's very little in the way, not insufficient, I guess, experience development throughout the industry. And that's why both Destination Ontario and Destination Canada have initiated signature experience programs to develop and encourage the development of more experiences that relate to destinations. And the need for collaboration. Oh, you threw this. I'm going to go through this well, I'll give you my perspectives on this. The current situation with TVTA, you're well aware of it. It's not well subscribed. There's large differences of opinion, some totally on board, other operators that aren't on board, some that support the current brand, some that don't. The brand lacks broad support. The destination itself lacks clarity. And there's many gaps in the destination management and marketing functions. It's not just marketing. Marketing probably represents 20% or something in that order of what needs to happen in a destination. So again, I'll lead you through an assessment of all the functions required in destination management and destination marketing, and our assessment of where the gaps are right now are identified on this slide in red at the bottom. I'm not going to go through these here, but in the exercise in the Camden room, we can go through that in more detail. And I'd love to get your perspectives in that session on where the primary and secondary responsibility should lie with each of those functional areas. So management and marketing, equally as important, probably the management more important than just the marketing. So that chart has been developed with Lincoln in mind. So we've taken our generic approach and chart and adapted it for this jurisdiction. The definition of the destination, I said it's not well defined, right? I mean, there are there are there's mixed messages going out into the marketplace. Wine Country Ontario Guide talks about Niagara Escarpment and the 20 Valley as one destination, then Niagara on the Lake. TPN deals with a number of DMOs, right? You being one of them, St. Catharines, or TVTA being one of them, St. Catharines being one, the Niagara South Shore being another. The Culinary Alliance, Tourism Alliance of Ontario identifies 39 destinations in their marketing. Prince Edward County is one of those 39. Another one is Wine Country. And under Wine Country, there are 5 jurisdictions, one of which is Niagara Escarpment and area. So mixed messages are going out to the market on what is the destination here. There's a much bigger opportunity than is being recognized now. Attractions Ontario as well. They have agricultural and brewery tours, and none of them cover this area specifically. Branding and positioning, does 20 Valley and that concept have brand equity? I would suggest not. So we are not branding experts, but we will provide our insights and our recommendations on how to go about undertaking a branding exercise and what needs to be considered. And from our professional tourism perspective, what some of the key characteristics are that should be incorporated in that brand. And I've reflected some of those on this slide. There are some very successful brands out there. 100% Pure New Zealand has been used for years for tourism as well as all other exports, and very successfully. You need to create a brand that has resonance in the marketplace, that has consistency over time. Target markets, we've done our assessment of the target markets and identified what we feel to be some of the highest priority target markets. And part of our assessment is that there's a need to maintain that free and independent, FIT, it's an acronym that we use in the industry, small group touring visitors, and expand the seasonality. Obviously, there's some, there's more success by operators right now in the fall season. There's real gaps in the year-round calendar, and some of the the activity markets that we see as priority are identified on the bottom of that slide. I will take you, those of you who come to the session in the Camden room, through a short exercise on experiences to help illustrate the difference between a service and an experience, and services is primarily what you've got now. We need to start to think in terms of developing experiences that are unique to Lincoln. And finally, the accommodation gap, we will make some recommendations on how that can be filled going forward. But again, that has to be done in the context of what accommodation is consistent with the type of travelers you're trying to attract and with the character of this destination and complementary to the other attractions and services and experiences that you're offering. So on this slide, there's just a couple of points that we've made that illustrate our thinking in that regard. I'll turn it back to Janice to continue on. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. So I'm just going to give you, instead of going through details, because we're going to do that in our next session, I'm just going to give you an update on where we are at in terms of the progress. So for QEW gateway signs, we know we've got 2 of them that are typical gateway signs that I'm sure you are all familiar with. And we have strategies as to whether to keep or enhance, and we will go through that in the next session. Other QEW signs that I think we're all familiar with are the tourism signs, otherwise known as Todd sign, although Todd's Todd's looks after everything within the boundary of the QEW, but everything outside is now the region's signs. So that division was made about 6 years ago, and that's how it sits at this point. So we know from speaking with the ministry that they aren't going to permit any more of these signs on the highway, the top one, and there's a big backlog for them. So they just have to wait for one of the other ones to stop their lease and new ones to come up, but no new signs are going to be going up. But the retail signs below, as you know, there are spaces available, so that's something that could be done there. The Lincoln boundary signs, these are the 3 types that we have. What we've discovered in our investigation with the region is that they are responsible for the ones in the middle. And given the question of can we take them down and put up new ones just for the town of Lincoln, the answer was absolutely not. So, but they are very open to the town of Lincoln putting up gateway signs in addition to this. And the ones on the right, we've discovered that they are actually owned by the different area municipalities. So even though we see similar ones in Welland and Grimsby and so on, these are town of Lincoln signs. So this is a decision to be made whether to upgrade these signs or keep them as they are. We have town identity signs. These again are regional signs as well, and similar to the other ones, they are not going to change. But if the town wants to put up new signs to replace them, then they just have to meet the engineering requirements to do so. The region won't comment at all on the style. The only thing they will comment on is engineering and if there was a safety issue. But of course, we wouldn't have that because we would design it properly to begin with. For wayfinding, just to let you know that we have finished photographing and inventorying all the signs out there. There's about 250 odd signs. And we're in the process of seeing what we can do to amalgamate signs together and to remove them as we go. So at the top, we have the regional tourism signs, and these are the trailblazers that are put up when there's a sign that's also put up on the highway. As I mentioned, this is now transferred to the region, so the region's looking after these signs. So whatever we suggest for this needs to get regional approval. Where these signs appear on a local road, then of course that's Town of Lincoln signs. But we would probably do a strategy that brings in the region so that we have continuity there. We have a few character signs, as you all know, the Beamsville bench signs that we think absolutely have to stay just because they do define the character of the area. And then we have identity and route signs. As you see in the bottom, we have Waterfront Trail, Niagara Escarpment Commission, and so on. And in our consultation with these groups, most of them have said that they are willing to entertain the idea of combining their signs with other ones. Once we come up with a design for them to review, they'll be happy to have a look, and they are definitely would consider that. So our overall strategy, as we mentioned at the very beginning, is that for every sign installed, remove at least one existing sign. But in our consultation with the region, we know that they are going to say absolutely no to at least 20 or 25 signs. So it will be a little difficult to meet this ideal, but we will still keep this in mind as we make suggestions, is that we are still trying to remove as many signs as we can. Of course, we want to have it be in keeping with the existing town and regional character. And I just want to mention at this point that there will be a branding and marketing strategy that the town is going to take on. And we will be working with them to incorporate that into the final design of the signs. So the expected outcome at the end is we will have the tourism strategy, then we're going to have the list of tourism opportunities, and we're going to have the gateways and the wayfinding. And now we're at the end. So I'll give it back to Paul.
Thank you, Janice and Mike. So at this point, I'm sure the committee does have some wonderful questions on what you've just seen here this afternoon. But we will ask you to hold off your questions because we do feel that some of the questions may be answered in the workshops. If not, we will be returning into this room for a closing wrap-up session, which you can ask some additional questions at that point. So with your leeway, Chair, we do ask if we can break for the workshops. So thank you.
Sure. Let's do it.
Okay, yes.
Take it
Thank
away.
you, yes, so I forgot to mention. So what we're gonna ask is wards 1 and 2 in her worship to head to the Beamsville room, and 3 and 4 to head to the Camden room, and staff and our consultants will be joining you in those rooms. And then at some point, we will switch, so that way everyone gets to both sessions.
Okay.
Thank you.
We have our marching orders. That's a pretty cool picture. Okay, are we all back? So, Mr. Deanne? will
Yes,
provide-
thank you,
will
Chair.
Provide comments?
I will. Thank you, Chair, through you. So, councilors, and for the public at home, we just went through a workshop session where we did talk about gateway and wayfinding design principles, as well as speaking about destination management, marketing organizations, and the different sort of models that we've seen throughout Ontario in terms of how tourism is run. And so, you know, at the end of the day, I will make some comments right at the end, but I do open this up for questions and comments from the committee, so thank you.
So we are going to open up for questions from council now. Well, just maybe, not so much a question, but a comment that you just kind of wet our whistle, I think, a little bit. You know, it just, you know, you probably spend, you know, at least an hour or more with each of the topics for sure. But, you know, I think it's, you know, a great presentation from both of you tonight, and I think we're moving along nicely on this. So where we go from here, you're going to let us know.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So the next steps on this is a public information session on October 16th that we will be inviting members of the communities to. Obviously, council is more than welcome to attend that session. We'll be sending out an invite. It should already be in calendars, but we'll be sending out because we're going to change the location from the Fleming Center to the museum, so we're going to update that. But the goal today was, as Councilor McPherson had mentioned, start to familiarize council with the direction that we're going in terms of strategic planning and our overall gateway and tourism design. For the feedback that we have received from the community is that people are quite happy that the town is leading the way on this very important initiative to our community. And so we're very much looking forward to what council will see on November 20th, where we will be presenting a first draft to committee and for comment. Followed by that, a final document and presentation will be coming in February for endorsement by council. So that's where we are.
Very good.
Thank you. Oh, in addition, if I may, I just wanted
Sure.
to thank my steering committee colleagues who are in the back of the room, Ms. Beatty, Ms. Harris, and Ms. Ainen, as well as Mr. Bruder, for helping to lead on the strategic project. So thank you to them.
Okay, very good. So, I have a motion that we receive and file a presentation regarding tourism strategy, gateways, and wayfinding. We will require a mover for the motion. Councillor Timmers, all in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. Is there any comments that the CAO wants to make?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I will try to keep my comments very brief. Similarly, to thank the steering committee, Mr. Deanne, and of course Michael and Janice and their team for the work they've done. I think when we talk about tourism, it is much bigger than I think just bringing people to our community, because it's about income creation, it's about generating jobs, it's about all those various elements. And I think as Paul highlighted in his closing comments, there are a lot of people in the community, a lot of stakeholders in the community that are looking to the town to lead in this area. And I think there's an immense amount of goodwill. I think at the end of the day, we'll come up with a solution that I think benefits both the community, benefits the greater region that we talked about in terms of having, you know, more fluid and more soft boundaries as we tackle some of these problems. And then, of course, just how we get around our community in terms of directing people here and there. So a great start, and I think as Chair McPherson highlighted, we probably could have spent a couple of hours in each of your sessions talking about these exciting projects. So thank you from me as well.
Okay, so confidential items on the agenda, we have none. Are there any staff remarks? Seeing none. Committee remarks, any committee remarks? Seeing none. There being no further business, I call this meeting adjourned.